and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. There is such a thing as buyer's remorse. We've all suffered it from time to time. We've gone out and in the heat of the moment, we've been in a shop and paid over good money for something, or something's delivered from Amazon the next day and you're like, oh God, I wish I hadn't bought that. And, you regret doing something that you've done in the heat of the moment. This isn't strictly speaking buyer's remorse because he didn't pay for it as such. But it's where someone has made a decision, gone ahead, done something, and instantly regretted it. Imagine, if you will, you've walked through a door, and the moment you shut the door behind you, you look and you go, I wish I hadn't walked through that door. Now, this young man has done that. He's walked through a door and there is no going back. He's instantly regretted it. And I'm sure he's not the only one. But let's have a look at this. Right, so the young man in question, he's been anonymised. Nobody knows his name, quite rightly. But he's very, very stupid, I think. It's the anguish of a young man who has had sex organs removed on the NHS, then regretted it the same day. Well, what do you think? As he sues the NHS over gender reassignment surgery. He's suing them. I mean, he didn't just walk in off the street and the NHS said, right son, you're next on the table, all for his ghoulies. That doesn't happen. He's had to sign forms. He's had to have advice. Nobody's done this to him. He's done this to himself. The unnamed man has said doctors did not warn him about the drastic outcome of gender reassignment surgery, which has left him infertile and incontinent. I'm sorry, son, but if you get your ghoulies off, you're infertile. And as you don't actually have a vagina of your very own, you're going to be incontinent because you've got nothing that will staunch the flow, because that's sitting in a jar over there. Campaigners say it's first medical negligence case over NHS transgender care. It's not transgender care. It's a sexual realignment. Who's to say he was transgender? No evidence that he was transgender. He claims he was asked about surgery but delayed as he had doubts, but went ahead over fears care he'd been receiving for his gender problems would stop. Yeah, unfortunately he was given care by medical means like this, instead of the care he should have been receiving, which was purely psychological. On Twitter, the man said that he'd been effectively castrated by the surgery. I don't think effectively castrated is the right term. I believe the correct term is castrated. A young British man who had his genitals removed during gender reassignment surgery is suing the NHS over the operation in a historic legal action. Well, the historic level of stupidity, I would suggest. He complains that doctors did not warn him of the drastic outcome. What the hell do you think was going to happen? Which has left him infertile, incontinent and feeling like a eunuch. Well, no, you are a eunuch. You're not like one. You're not similar to a eunuch. You're a eunuch. He said on Twitter yesterday, the minute I woke up from surgery, I knew I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Well, there's no Control Z. I mean, why did you go ahead if there was doubt? Anyway, campaigners say that this is the first medical negligence case over NHS transgender care in this country, and the NHS trust involved has not been named. Stephanie Davies-Arai, founder of Transgender Trend, a group advising parents on transgender children and young adults, said, it is hoped that this will force a rethink by the NHS about this kind of barbaric surgery on patients who are told by medics it will help them. It will never help them. They are going thinking that their problem is physical. Their bodies are perfectly fine. There is nothing wrong with their bodies. Their issue is mental. You can hack everything you like. You can't cure it. It's a mental condition. He has a very real case for compensation against the health service. We believe he has suffered harm. Yeah, but it was self-inflicted. He signed the consent forms. His case has been taken on by lawyers in Liverpool, and it centres on whether the NHS and its gender clinics adequately counselled him before the operation 5 years ago. The patient in his 30s was brought up in the north of England and has detransitioned from being a woman to live as a man again. Well, not really. But he still sits down to have a wee. I mean, I'm laughing at this, and it is very tragic, but ultimately, he made the decision, and there's no going back. He did this to himself, and now he's suing for the decision he made. I'm going to stick with this one, because actions and decisions have consequences. You make the decision, you live with the consequences. There's no point coming back 5 years later going, oh, I made a mistake, can I have some compo? You're not getting your ghoulies reattached, mate. And his sexuality should have been discussed before the radical, irreversible gender surgery. I have been castrated. That is the correct term, he says on the Twitter feed, which has 19,000 followers. I cannot believe they, the NHS, were allowed to do this to me. They didn't do it off their own back. They didn't go, right, get him in and we'll whip them off. That's not how it happens. I was not even asked if I wanted to freeze my sperm or have kids in the future. Yesterday, he posted a picture of his huge bundle of medical notes, which will be used by his lawyers to bring the case against the NHS. Tulip R says he transitioned at 25, more than a decade ago. I presume Tulip R is the name he's going by on Twitter. More than a decade ago, and started taking female hormones to feminise his body. This was followed by surgery when he underwent an NHS operation called penile inversion with scrotal graft, which removes the male genitalia and uses the tissue to construct a false vag. He says he grew up in the north of England, and I knew deep down from a young age I was gay and deeply terrified of it. You see, being gay is simply an attraction. Being transgender is a mental illness. Why have you gone through this if you're not mentally ill? Well, the fact that you've signed it and done it shows you may not have been mentally ill, but my God, you were mental. Everyone in the family joked and expressed disgust and disapproval of gay people. He withdrew into an online world where he felt at peace. There, at 23, he found discussions about gender dysphoria and the fear of living in the wrong sexual body. That's me, I thought. Yeah, okay, so you thought you were gender dysphoric, and so you went through with the operation. Why are you suing? He found an internet forum called Angels, which was directed at trans women, men who wish to be women, and yet strangely never will be. They urged him to transition now before it was too late. He says that latched on to the idea with zeal. He took female hormone drugs, bought privately, off the internet then, and later prescribed by his GP and an adult NHS gender clinic to suppress his male characteristics and look feminine. But when an NHS psychiatrist asked him if he wanted gender reassignment surgery, he delayed for 2 years because he had doubts. So you had doubts. So why did you go ahead with it? Worried that if he refused he'd be denied NHS treatment for his gender problems, he finally agreed. So you agreed. His tweets explain, eventually I found myself on the operating table. Immediately on waking up for surgery, I knew I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. My sex had been lobotomised. After surgery, he confronted his GP about his doubts. He claims they shrugged and said there was no guidance for those who regretted the surgery and treatment. And the tweets go on. I have no sensation in my crotch region at all. That's because you don't have one. You could stab me with a knife. Somebody already has, I think. I wouldn't know. The entire region is numb. No one ever told me that the base area of your penis is left. It can't be removed. It means you have a stump inside which twitches. He says his sex drive died about 6 months after he began taking female hormones. This is what happens. This is why only the mentally ill go through with this thing. Because there's nothing actually physically wrong with your body. And then you've found out that there's nothing wrong with your body and it's all up here, by which time you've eviscerated yourself. For what? He says, I was glad to be rid of it, but now I realise what I'm missing and it won't come back. He describes the living nightmare of waking up and forgetting that he's lost his penis and scrotum. I expect something that was there for 3 decades and it's not. My heart skips a beat every damn time. In his tweets, he describes how the operation has left him struggling to relieve himself. It takes me about 10 minutes to empty my bladder. It's extremely slow, painful, and because it dribbles It would then go all over the entire area, leaving me soaking. I find moments later my underwear is wet. It slowly drips out for more than an hour. I never knew that I would risk smelling of pee everywhere I go. Well, ultimately, dear boy, you signed off on it. You made the mistake. You made a decision. You can't sue people for the decisions you made. And it's not as though you're a child. You know, you're in your 20s. You're a grown-ass adult. And if you didn't know that having your ghoulies and your old man cut off would mean you'd have no ghoulies and an old man and made you sterile, then, well, I'm afraid that's down to you, isn't it? Ultimately. So, good luck. Good luck. I'll come up now. You've got to ask what kind of person goes through life unaware that if you remove the ghoulies, you're going to be sterile. I mean, really, what are the schools teaching these days? I mean, you know, ridiculous. But you cannot make your decisions and then regret them and then sue someone else because of the decisions you made. Especially when you've signed all the consent forms and start inventing things like, oh, the doctors didn't discuss it. Rubbish. The doctors will have discussed that at length, let me tell you. But that's how it is. But what's sad is that there are groups out there that push this on people, particularly on young people. Go and get it done, go and get it done, go and get it done. Without discussion of regrets. And that's ultimately sad. And it does destroy lives. So it is actually tragic for this young man. I do get it. But you've got to look at the humorous side of it. Because he has brought this on himself. And the reason I find the humour is because he's now suing. You know? But it's not that funny when this is basically little more than children being pushed into it. That's tragic. That's the real tragedy. Anyway, I shall end here. If you like what you hear and see on the channel, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring the bell for future notifications. Leave a like, leave a comment. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and goodbye.